So these collections of papers that I've just hoarded for the past 15 years of my life, I'm trying to like determine is this something that I want to keep or get rid of, and then I'm like organizing it into the filing cabinet.
Like, what kind
That's
of
been my
papers are we talking about? Because I feel like I've wiped my entire like any documentation from outside of like obvious stuff like birth certificates and things like that. Like, I feel like anything from school, from like kindergarten to probably no, honestly, I don't know if I have any papers left from school. Like, I
you
know
have
you do.
any?
I mean, unless there was like any that my parents kept around for like nostalgia, for like maybe a book I wrote in
Well,
kindergarten or something.
and that's kind of what I'm doing right now because going through like some of my grandparents' stuff and then like some of my parents' stuff, just like their old high school things or their college things. I I get a hint of nostalgia just reading their stuff. Like it like puts me back into like the 80s and like you could just see what was like going on in the world, what people were talking about. And that's kind of what I'm doing for not only for myself, but like for my future kids. Like I just want to give them the opportunity to understand like what was kind of going on, what was I like growing up, because I feel like that's a pretty cool insight to have. So I'm just
Okay.
like going through things and selectively picking out the best things and the things that put me in the best light to show to my future kids that I'm a wonderful person.
I was about to say
But
I'm
I'm
sure
just
you're cherry
gaslighting them.
picking. I'm
I'm
sure you're
lying to
cherry
them.
picking because like I know the videos, the kinds of videos that me and you are captured on, and the pictures that we've been captured in, and like uh, they're cool memories to have. I'm gonna cherish them and keep them. I'm not gonna show those to my grandkids. those are those are like you might show your kids. Like for example, my parents are, my parents and I are now at like kind of the age where like I'm old enough and like to for them to like start to be able to like really tell me things and like show me
Mhm.
old pictures from back in the day, like to where I'm like mature enough to understand kind of how they grew up. So it's like that relationship has evolved. But like the stuff that they couldn't have told me when I was 15. It's just
No,
same
because
thing
it would
with
have
like
gone over your head
yeah, same thing
completely.
with
Yeah.
like a lot of these like you're saying those memories and everything. I feel like a lot of them you don't really start to value until you're older. Um,
Hmm.
because yeah, I'm sure my parents could show me something when I was 14 and I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And then like just wipe it. But like now it's like they've told me one or two, and it's an Asian family, so it's not like there's a ton of sharing, but the one or two things they've told me, I'm like, oh wow, like that's kind of crazy that that's like they've lived through certain things, in like the history of the world. I'm like, oh, that's nuts to like put that into perspective. So yeah, that is cool to keep that like because you never know. I'm Actually, this is a good question. Just a quick side tangent, hypothetical. Based on that, do you think COVID will be remembered as like a significant event?
Yeah. 100%. That's going to be if World War III doesn't happen in our lifetime, COVID might be the biggest thing to occur in our lifetime because the world shut down for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I'd say outside like for our memorable lifetime, right? Like, because like 9/11, I think was the most impactful during our lifetime, but like
Yeah,
we're I
and it
I don't think it's
resulted
fair to count it for us.
the death of thousands of Americans due to a terrorist attack that led into our military involvement in the Middle East, or further continued involvement in the Middle East. Um, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. But something that like theoretically, and that did kill like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and then something that shut down the world and shut down how like businesses were run, how people interacted, how we were able to go about life for 3 years, just completely altered. If it's going to be significant in the sense of like just the differences between generations and how people interact. You kind of see that now with like the younger population, where people don't know how to interact like in person. Like my mom talks about it all the time. She's a school teacher, or she's mentioned it a couple times. How the kids are just different. They're not socialized. They don't know how to interact with one of another.
Well, it's crazy because I mean, I've noticed this with like just like family interaction or like when multiple families get together or like when it's kind of giant like larger groups. I've always been
Mhm.
near like the higher end of being able to like talk to adults. You know, like even when I was like early teens, I was like sitting with the adults, kind of being able to converse with them. But
Mhm.
I think that's a thing I've noticed. Is that like younger kids out of those families, they just have no idea of. Sometimes they can interact with like their friends and everything, but like as soon as it's interacting with someone outside of their immediate, I talk to you every single day, that it shuts down.
Mhm.
Right? They like once they lose that comfort of the routine of, hey, me and you talk about this. Like for example, me and you have kind of a structure to what we talk about, but content changes every time. Um,
Mhm.
but like I've noticed that, yeah, like the COVID kids who lost your like me and you didn't we lost time because we lost like college time, and yeah, it was like somewhat impactful, but we were relatively developed in our social skills by the time COVID hit.
Honestly, honestly, COVID kind of saved me. I thrived during COVID
I
because I
got
could.
very fat during
It,
COVID, so we had a different
how,
experience.
no, you didn't get fat. What are you talking about? That was like the beginning of your weight loss journey.
No, 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 I leaned down when like COVID was toning down, I think. But like when it first hit,
Mm.
I looked at some pictures, like you know when barbershops are closed, I didn't shave at all, and I was 20 pounds up. It was not a pretty picture. So another thing, yeah, I'll tell my kids and grandkids about it. Never showing them pictures of me from COVID.
I if we're still friends when you have kids, I'm definitely showing them terrible photos of you.
I'm here's the thing. I have no doubt that like we will still be, but I might have to cut you off for a few years when we have kids, so that way like that you can't show them like the pictures of me like eating a full watermelon but with my hands, like things like that.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
need
show
to
your
have
kids when they're 5 years old. Just like look how cool your dad used to be, and now look at him.
I need to be able to maintain some level of
He's a
respect for
loser.
me.
He's a loser with a desk job. He used to be smashing watermelons with his bare hands.
Yeah, I will say though, I think COVID, I I liked some of COVID, right? But like I think that's because, like we said, we were older and everything. So yeah, it sucked a little bit in some ways, but I don't really care. But like kids that lost the one that I really felt bad for is like anyone that lost like high school time, especially
Mhm.
you know like junior to senior year. You know like when you're starting to you know really be social, maybe start partying, like hanging out with people, prom, things like that. I think kids who lost those experiences, I think that's like one of the biggest impacts. Um, but also kids
Yeah,
losing middle school and elementary, especially.
yeah, it's definitely more. I don't know. Obvious with the kids like in high school that missed out on a couple of years, missed out on like big events like prom and homecoming and sporting events. Sporting events in like particular, I know for me, sports were the only thing that I cared about in high school. I did not care about a single other thing because I was a three sport athlete, so I was always doing a sport, always working towards a skill. And if that was taken away from me for a year or 2 years, I think I would be a completely different human being. Like just completely different. And like my sisters, they grew up. They're a couple years younger than me, and so they had that experience where um, they didn't get to go to prom, or it was like an altered prom, and then they couldn't be in person for graduation, and yeah, I think they had an online graduation or something. Something weird happened. I don't know, but no, they've talked about those experiences and um, like because I'm their older brother and they got to see me do all these cool things when I was their age, and then when they had I don't know not the expectation, but they were looking forward to it, and when they couldn't do it, they were kind of bummed by it. But now, if you ask them, they're probably fine. It's probably just a thing of the past, something that happened.
Yeah, it does kind of suck though, like especially like you were saying for them, because like when not that I'm saying like we'll always be reflecting on high school times, but like I did have a lot of good times in high school, right? Like college, we had some fun times, but like some of my most treasured memories, like the one or two offs, like you know prom in high school, like prom senior year prom, or like the final football game, like going to the final football game between our high school, like the rival high schools. You know, it was like thousands of kids there. Like those like certain handfuls stick out of my mind, and like not like we'll be bringing those up to our kids and everything, but it definitely is. rough to like not have that shared experience. Like the only thing that people that were in high school at the time can share is like, yeah, we were all locked up, I guess. Like we were all locked up on our computers. So that's the only shared experience, and it's kind of a crappy shared experience to be able to talk about.
And it's not only a shared experience with people of your own age group, but it's like a generational shared experience. Like I can talk to my grandparents about their prom and their homecoming and their football games because the structure of it's been relatively similar. Yeah, it's like different in different locations and they have different celebrations, but like the core um essence of the events were the same. And that's pretty cool. I think
Yeah,
that's why everybody goes back to like high school stories, like living in the past, because like that's just something that everybody can relate to. Because you were it was mandatory for you to go to high school.
and it's cool too because, like you were saying about the generations, but an experience that I've had, with the military, meeting different people from different places, is the regional differences, right? Like every single person, their prom was set up different. They had different. Some people had graduation parties. We called them open houses. Like they were all
Hmm.
different, but like yeah, you can generally everyone had some kind of prom. Everyone had some kind of graduation parties. Everyone had some of those things, so you can like always talk about it, regardless of region, generation. Like as long as you're in the U.S., as long as you grew up in the U.S. and went to like public school in the U.S., you can relate.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I really hope that COVID isn't the thing though that our generation's remembered for, or like the big thing that we had growing up. I hope that it's maybe this is the optimist in me. Maybe I'm just hoping that there's like something really cool that happens to the world. Like there's like some groundbreaking technology, like AI cures all disease and people are living healthier for longer and having just better lives overall. I think that would be kind of cool. I want to see like I want to see like the Roaring Twenties without the crash at the end.
I mean, but you're tracking the. I'm not too read up on this meme. I know Aiden sends me a lot of these, but like the nothing ever happens thing, where it's like, we expect some great, not great revolution. That's bad. Um, but like some great events to be happening, some major social changes, like a 9/11, a Great Depression, something like that. But like it's I don't know. It almost feels like maybe this is from a sheltered standpoint of like living in the U.S. and not really having to deal with like global problems as much. But like it
Hmm.
really does feel like even though there's so much like strife, like politically or between countries, like other countries, it feels like we're in such a stable time where like we just don't have those one-off events, right? Because even if AI, like I mean, AI is going to keep growing. It's not like we can be like, it's not like we'll have the 9/11 generation or the GWAT generations experience where we
Hmm.
can be like, here I was in 9/11. I joined the military because of 9/11. Like we won't have that personal experience, right? We can be like, I was alive and working when AI came around, but it
Hmm.
feels like those those technological advances and things, while they're cool to experience, it does like that we won't really have our personal experiences as much. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah, there's not going to be like a strong, just like this cool thing happened and everybody's life changed immediately on that day. It's going to be a progressive thing where if AI just makes everybody's life significantly better, it's going to be slowly rolled into people's lives. It's like kind of like how it is now. Like you, um, like a specific example in the medical field is that like a lot of AI is used for like documentation purposes, so that you don't have to spend 50% of your day typing down notes. You can just like upload the information that you need to upload, and then the AI does off of the information that you uploaded can create you like an assessment and a plan and what you need to do with that specific patient. Or at the very least, it gives you really good recommendations that you can bounce off of. And so it's made workflow for a lot of people just significantly better and less stressful. But then what's the next step after that?
But
Next step
well,
after that is people losing jobs, which kind of
th-
sucks. But
so that's the question I'll pose to you is so some kind of like a hope I always had. It's the same thing you were saying, right? Like something I always said in high school was I was like when Afghanistan was wrapping up, I was like I hope this is going to sound crazy, but I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? Like a lot of people that wanted to join the military or grew up around that. experience. They were like, I hope another war happens. I hope something big happens in the world,
Mhm.
positive or negative. I'm just so bored with like the current status quo. So that's the like I don't know
But
if I've
this is edgy teenage Dave wanting a war to cure his boredom.
right. A war is different, but like but even back in the day, I was always like, yeah, positive or negative. I just want change. Right? I want the world to change. I don't know how I feel about that now. I haven't really pondered that. It's not a hope that
Yeah.
I always keep now. I think stability is kind of nice once as you get older. Um, but that's the question I'll pose to you is like, does the hope that you'll live through something interesting and like a talking point, like a real memory, do you think you would still hold that if the event were to be a negative, right? Like let's say AI comes around and I don't think it will be, but let's just say it's like a net negative for, the workforce, like people's quality of life because you can't find jobs, people losing purpose. Would you rather that and the world to be changing, or it dies out and the world maintains like stays its course?
Um. See, these questions are always interesting because through like the very few life event, like big world life events that have happened, um, my life hasn't really changed, and like even with COVID was just like kind of something that happened in the background. But the memories I have from COVID are what I was doing day to day. So it was like the friends that I was making, that what I was doing. If there was like a significant impact to my day, I think I would be bothered. Um, but no, I like stability. I don't need to see a bunch of chaos in the world, um, good or bad. But I'm saying that from kind of like a privileged point where like life is pretty good right now. I have like a 5-year plan, and I can kind of navigate those waters pretty easily. I can bounce around. But if like, something like big happened and for some reason the world doesn't need physical therapists anymore, yeah, I would be kind of upset.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of the difference, right? Like when you're in school, I mean, that's why kind of relating to politics, like we always do, like why a lot of college kids, for example, are super involved in activism or politics or searching for a problem to solve. It's like when you're just in school and you're just and all you have to do is uh, do a tenth of your reading and then make AI write a discussion post. Like when that's your day-to-day responsibility, your hope is, oh, I hope something interesting happens. I hope like I can change the world. Everyone wants to change the world uh you until that's your day-to-day 9 to 5 and you have to show up to work for it, right? Like
Hmm.
I think like that's what I've realized is like as soon as I enter the workforce, I'm like, I don't know. Like I kind of like some level of predictability and like you said, like when your plans fall into place, right? Like I have like a pretty not a concrete plan, but I've got a pretty thought out plan like you do, right? For our next 5 years at least.
Hmm.
And yeah, as soon as you're not as soon as you can see, I mean, even you're at the like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. If that
Hmm.
if your plans in future become jeopardized, I yeah, I think that's when you start maturing. I think that's when you know you're an adult, when you're like, I don't hope for a social revolution or the next Great War or Great Depression.
Yeah, yeah. I generally just want people to be doing pretty good. That like a non-controversial opinion. I just want to see people do well. Like I don't care where they're at, what they're doing. I just want them, if they're doing good already, great. I want them to do better. Or if they're doing not so good, I want them to do better. I feel like people are, and I feel like that's just like a pretty like tame opinion to have. I don't like seeing, I don't know. I feel like there's an issue with like a lot of the activism that goes on like the big campuses where you have these people that are like pointing out like the discrepancies between either certain types of people or religions or ethnicities, but then those same people don't do anything to change it. So it's like they're finding all of the problems but then not proposing like actual reasonable solutions. And I think that's kind of upsetting, but that's just the world of academia where you just throw a bunch of theories and not truly living in the real world. Like when you're on a college campus, it's you're protected, you're safe. Um you don't have like real life worries for the most part. and some people do. But I just remember like undergrad, I I don't know. It just didn't feel like the real world. It felt like a simulated box of like baby stepping you into the real world.
I think that's part of why I was more of like I would say extremist, but like that's not the word I'll use to describe myself. But like I was definitely more outspoken about, like you were saying, like theories, right? I was like, if the world ran exactly like I envision it, everything would be better, right? Like,
Yeah,
and no matter how realistic it is or how feasible the plan was, like both sides of the spectrum of the political spectrum, when you're not facing the consequences of your choices and you're just saying, I think other people should do things exactly like I think, it's a lot easier
yeah.
to say that, right? Like as soon as you have to face the consequences and be like, hey, make this decision, and your decision uh, affects whether or not your family eats and whether you have a
Yeah.
job for the next week, like that. As soon as you start facing consequences, that's when that idealism starts to go away a little bit. So,
It kind of reminds me of like a Milton Friedman quote where, like famous economist, he's just like the most mismanaged money is money that is given to you by people that you don't care about for a purpose that you don't care about. And so it's just like if you're not directly involved in the actions that you are creating and it's not impacting you in any way, there's just going to be mismanagement absolutely everywhere. It's going to be chaos.
hence the federal government, right? Like that's,
And hence the federal government. Exactly.
I mean, like I get to see it firsthand a lot of times. It's people who it's it's not their money, right? It's taxpayer money, and also like they have no um, direct effect or impact on like the mission itself or whatever, whether it's the military, like defense, or whether it's you know uh, U USAID, or like whether it's any government entity. As soon as they don't really have any emotional tie to their cause, yeah, it no longer matters, right? Like it's fake money. I mean that's what that's like a common saying that that at least the military has. It's like it's fake money, right? Like
I mean,
we
you've told that to me a couple different times where there was like a trip and they like booked out a hotel and then you had this much money that they just essentially handed you and they're just like, okay, go do what you need to do, but it was like a ridiculous amount of money and you're just like, I don't think I could ever spend this if I really wanted to try.
yeah,
Like,
like
is wasteful spending just like I know that's like the hot topic right now with like Doge and like all of like that entire department's thing, but like have you've seen it firsthand, right?
yeah, I will say so. So my experience is a little different. I won't get into like specifics, but um, the kind of position I'm in, it's well. Let's just take one example, right? Per diem is something that is like pretty big where I'm at, and so people get sent on a trip, or like whether it's training or whether it's going to a conference or something, and let's say it's Germany, for example. There's places in Germany where just to live there every single day, they hand outside of your base pay, outside of the allowances they already give you for housing, the allowances they already give you for food, they hand you $136 a day of per diem. And that is absolute absurdity, right? Like $136 for 3 meals a day. You're eating like a king. You're eating like the 1%, right? Like to be
That's yeah, yeah.
spending that much money.
You're going out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and getting like one of the more expensive options at every place that you go.
Yeah, like that's the crazy part to me is how, like you were saying, how detached people are from it, right? Like it's not your money. You're not responsible for it. Um, you don't have to answer to anyone about like where this money is going. It just gets handed out to every single
Hmm.
person, right?
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, the whole wasteful spending thing. Yeah, not to dwell on it too much because we brought it up last time, but I do benefit from it, right? Like I obviously benefit from it being a part of the system, but
Hmm.
also seeing it from the inside, I'm like, if I'm taking a uninvolved stance from it, it's not okay. It's not okay because I do pay taxes, right? Like I benefit from it, but I do pay taxes, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of money that goes to just waste.
Well, that's what's nice for you is that like you're paying taxes and you're being directly refunded just by the position that you have. Now, just imagine every other non-federal employee paying taxes and not seeing where their taxes are going and not seeing the benefit of paying taxes.
I I will say
You
most people
you
who
can see
are
the frustration.
those like as I consider myself generally more libertarian in a lot of my stances, right? Like smaller government just in general. But I think if anyone like people on the other side who are more authoritarian, who believe in the larger government, I think of those people who are like, yeah, taxes are good, it funds all these public services. I think if they just got dropped into the federal government for a month, they would change their tune really quick. Like once you start seeing where like where your money is going and how much money they're taking from you and how the roads still have a pothole every 5 yards,
Mhm.
you start to change your tune real quick.
Yeah, I think that's like a good perspective. What are your thoughts on like a mandatory, and it doesn't have to be like military, but like mandatory, like working a federal job for like 2 to 3 years? Like other countries have like mandatory like military service. What are your thoughts on like mandatory like federal service?
I mean, honestly, I do believe in. I don't think it's not realistic, but I would believe in
Mhm.
mandatory military service, right? That's like that's my like that is my um I guess perfect world or like ideal world, where it's like not like not even like a 4 year contract, but like let's say 2 years, right? It's not a combat thing. It's just like maybe like an administrative side. But I think a realistic stance, yeah, like a not even federal, just some kind of public service or public sector work.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, I think everyone should, um,
But doesn't that kind
because
of go against your like your libertarian stance?
I think it's more. I think it it is in contrast with like the libertarian stance of like, oh, I don't think the government should force you to do these things, but I think with how bloated everything, like for example, people can spend 30 years of their life just using, let's say, going to the public system, school system, and then using grants or scholarships or whatever. You can live for 30 years and not actually contribute anything to society, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm not saying PhDs are useless or graduate degrees are useless, but there's a lot of people who you can find a PhD.
I've I've seen the world. I've been in the world of academia. Yeah, there's definitely some individuals out there that are able to get like grant funding for research that is like innovative, but it's not necessarily groundbreaking. So it's not ultimately that useful to society in the long run. But they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these things. Like I've seen it. It's like there's lifelong just academics that don't have any sort of contribution to society.
Yeah, and I don't think that, the public sector, I'm not necessarily saying that like, oh, that's a guarantee that you're going to positively contribute, but I think that it's it's such a positive one, just being in the workforce and actually doing something to advance some kind of goal. I think that's
Mhm.
something every human being should do. Um, but yeah, I think like working for the state or like, whether you're military or you're at a desk job or you're a cop or something like that, I think the benefits outweigh the cost of like self-determination and freedom. I think the benefits to like the personal side, um, yeah, I do believe in some kind of mandatory, like even if it's like a year, right? Like a year, maybe if you
Go
want
be
to go
an
to
intern
college,
for
like
a congressman.
yeah,
Yeah,
like a work
do
study or
do
something.
something. Yeah, yeah, I could see that because there's like just through all of like the miscellaneous jobs that I've had, I think I would have benefited more from having something a little bit more sit down, professional, like let's learn something while we're here, instead of like my door dashing days or my time at a butcher shop or my as much as I love ice cream, scooping ice cream for 7 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that it also I get there's some people who just do the wage jobs, or like, maybe they're at a restaurant, they work at a restaurant, that's all they've done their entire life, right? And it's fine, like really, it's providing a service. You're doing work, you are contributing to a community, but and even if you like it, like I think that the the level of worldview that working at a higher level provides. Like I said, it's not even like saying everyone has to do the military, but let's say you just go to work in the state government for a little bit, or even local, your county government. You just have to do a little
Mhm.
internship, maybe 15 hours a week, or like something really small. I think just that the worldview it provides you, I've matured so much as a person, just seeing the larger, uh, the bigger picture, right? Even if I don't believe in it, like a lot of the bigger picture I don't believe in. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
seeing how it works.
but like some of those like things that you talk about, or can be like the biggest lessons that you learn. The biggest lessons that you learn are typically from like failure or like witnessing like how inefficient something is, and then you can use your own brain and use the experiences that you had to make something better in the future. Like I've learned the most about physical therapy about going to bad clinical rotations and realizing how much this sucks and how they're doing something terrible. Like yeah, they're still providing like a good service and it's like a net positive for the people and the community, but like the way that things are run, it's just like I can make this better. Let me make this better, please.
I will say that does kind of highlight a problem with the like mandatory public service, or making sure everyone does some kind of public sector work, is that there
Hmm.
is a competency just disparity, right? Like if you force some people into it and like serving their community, yeah, there's going to be, I think the vast majority of people have the capability to, provide some good, or at least not be a negative. But there are plenty
Hmm.
of people just based like, and not by no fault of their own, just their pure capability.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. That is a tough conversation to have, because you take someone who's
So then what
unqualified.
do you do? What do you do? Do you have like a federal exam similar to that of like an ASVAB? And then depending on the score that you can get like a selection of like 5 to 10 federal jobs that you can
Yeah,
select from.
I think so. I think you still have to be qualified, but like for example, like maybe if you don't meet the standards for like the physical and mental standards for like let's say local, right, being a cop, right? Let's say you don't meet the standards for being a cop. Yeah, maybe we don't put an unqualified person in that job and give them a
And
government vehicle and a gun, right?
honestly, no, I wouldn't have I would have like police officers be like their own separate thing. Just because they require like a decent amount of just like training. And if that's not something you want to do, and then you have to deal with like all the bullshit that cops go through, that could just like mess you up for life.
Yeah, okay,
But a
that's fair.
firefighter, if you wanted to be a firefighter, that would be kind of cool.
But there are like one of the biggest problems though isn't even like the mental capability sort. Like that is something I'm kind of talking about when I say capability, but also not to bring up the whole gym thing, because that always is how our conversations devolve. But like,
It's we're so one track minded. It's like we're just monkey brain when it comes to our podcast, where it's gym this, gym that. How can we tie this economic policy back to the gym and how we think that everybody needs to be hitting the gym every single day and how the world would be better?
yeah, we know what we like, and we know what we like talking about, and it's like two things, right? It's like the gym and AI. But
But like we only kind of know what we're talking about with one of those things.
oh yeah, yeah. But that's the fun of it. So, but like one of the stats, I think it's something like it's higher than 50%, I know, but it's something like over 50% of the US population wouldn't be qualified for like the military service, for example, right? And
When just based off of like BMI,
yeah,
body fat
just
composition.
BMI alone, let alone passing a test, which is not even that stringent.
Yeah.
But that's one of those problems with like capability when we're talking about mandatory civil service or mandatory um, military. It's like, do we do we force people to develop this capability and force people to care about their mental capability and their physical wellness so they can fill these? But it's like you can't really do that, right? Like
No,
something I've always said.
I think you yeah, like something in high school you just do like a serious physical exam. You do like a federal test that just similar to an IQ test, but not quite an IQ test, just like a basic knowledge exam similar to the ASVAB. And if you hit certain scores, you are then qualified for certain positions. But and then the higher that you score, the more options that you have, and then the lower that you score, the less options you have because you're not qualified for the higher positions that whether that be like mentally or physically demanding challenges and tasks.
I mean, I think there's some yeah, there's something you said about like a real standardized test, right? Like I think that like Indiana, we have. I think I-step is probably still a thing. Like you remember I-step, right? Like that was like the
Yeah,
thing we always took in like middle school. But like,
middle school. Yeah.
for example, not to this might be detrimental to. I'm not supporting the Chinese government when I say this, right? Just clarifying, but not supporting or disavowing or anything. There's no political bias here. But China, they have like Gaokao, which is like the national exam, right? Like it's the exam that uh, I don't know if they use it for like government jobs, but I know it's for like getting into college or getting into university.
Hmm.
It's a national like China-wide exam, academic, but also there is a physical test to it. There's a PT test component, and I think that that should be implemented. I think that people who are born with disabilities or just have disabilities, I think you can get waivers. I think that there should be some level of leniency in that, but I think that a standard test to either go to university or or get like a government job for sure should be mandatory. You should be able to. Every human being should be able to like do basic math and like basic logical reasoning and also do like 5 push-ups. Like that there's no world in which that's okay that that as a citizen of the nation you can't do 5 push-ups and like do a mile
But
in 15 minutes. Right? Like
yeah,
that's
yeah. No, I could see that. Uh, maybe not for as much for university, but I don't know.
I think well for
Maybe.
university maybe like instead of maybe not as a prerequisite to get into university, but like either
Or
as a
maybe no, no.
consideration.
It should be like it should be like a walking test. You have to be able to walk for an hour without like copious amounts of breaks because you're going to be on a campus and you have to walk a lot. So you have to like meet. You just have to make sure that you can like walk to class. That's the bare minimum.
I think whether it's actually admission or whether it's maybe that's just a prerequisite to like scholarships, right? Like to be able to receive a federal grant or government money or to use other people's money to live on, you should be able to not be a drain on resources, right? Like to be like, hey, I want to apply for this scholarship to where I go to college for free and receive an
Hmm.
education for free. You
Hmm.
should prove that like you're not going to drain the healthcare system based on your own poor decisions.
Uh, yeah. Good luck with that.
I don't know.
No, yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. Like, yeah, in the sense, yeah. I mean,
Well, because we had that
because
even in you'll have to help me refresh on this, but like in I want to say elementary school for sure, but like middle school I believe too. Like we had kind of like annual tests, right? Like we had like a mile run or something like where it's like
yeah, we had we had a mile run. We had the beep test where it was like
the
you had to
paceogram.
run the pacer test. Yeah, yeah. We had there was international, or I mean, there was national testing done at certain levels all the way up until I think high school. And then high school, it was like you, at least for our school, it's like you had one mandatory PE class in that 4 years, and then that was it. You didn't have to do any more after that.
I I think
I don't
that
know.
there should be something
I'm
like
a
that.
big believer in the mind, body, and soul aspect of achieving like perfection as much as you can, close to perfection within the human body. And when you solely start to focus on the mind and neglect the soul and the spirit and the body, I think bad things happen. I don't know exactly what those bad things are, but I just have a gut feeling that bad things happen.
I think studies have proven what bad things happen when your heart fails and you can't. walk a quarter of a mile without gassing out.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before, but in a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, he talks a lot about like the blue zones, the people that are the happiest, that live the longest, that have the most fulfilling lives, and it's people that are social, they're connected with their family, they have some sort of spirituality, they work out to some degree, and they're always having like intellectual growth to some degree. Like those are like statistically the happiest people in the world.
Yeah, and while I do believe in smaller government, libertarian, all that, I think that there is so much of a net positive to enforcing that. Like I get the separation of church and state, all that. Like so, like maybe spiritual is more difficult, but
Hmm.
at least like physical and mental, right? Like we do standardized tests for kids, like on their on their academic capabilities. Why do we not do the same thing for physical? Why do we not do the same thing for? I mean, honestly, maybe spiritual is like just passing a psych eval or something, like being like, hey, like, are you fit to be in our society, or like, do you need a few years in a grippy sock institution?
You pull out the DSM-5 and you're just like, okay, let's see where you're struggling, bud. Let's see if you're allowed to go outside today.
Yeah, you need like 5 push-ups and to be like less than 2 severe psychological disorders, and then maybe you can receive federal funding for your education.
I don't feel like that's a terrible way to look at it. I don't know. Wait, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go. I'm burning up in my room. I'm gonna go turn on a fan. All right. No, I was kind of thinking about what I do for work now, and what I specifically in working. I'm working with like a lot of first responders, military, police officer, firefighters, EMT, um, and rehabbing them through their injuries. And I had the realization that like a lot of what we're doing is to get them ready for like their annual fitness check that they do, to make sure that they can like functionally perform that. Um, and so like a lot of like the and I know like police officers have to go through a psych check. They have to go through like a physical check every single year. And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that being incorporated into like other workplaces, whether that's just like, okay, you have a 30-minute break today where you have to go to the gym or you have to go work out or you have to go on a walk. I think that would be kind of like a cool implementation because
Yeah,
it's just like just recess for adults is what I'm looking for.
I mean that's something I'm really grateful for in like my current position is like at work. I can be like obviously I'm not going to be skipping out on things I have to do or meetings or whatever, but like I can just be like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym right now. I'll be gone for an hour and a half. You know, like I can just do that, and I think that you know I've heard certain agencies where they'll be
That's
like,
crazy. You get paid for that. That's you're making money from taxpayers to go work out in the middle of your day.
I'm basically a fitness influencer. I get paid to work out. Um,
Oh
but
my gosh.
like yeah, I've heard. I think I heard like the FBI like they give an hour a day where you can just go work out. Right, it's a paid hour of work. Whereas like are smoke breaks still a thing? Is that like still a mandated thing?
I don't know.
Because I was
Or
about to say like if that's still a thing and like mandatory time to work out or like exercise isn't a thing, that'd be insanity.
uh, okay, no. Under federal law, employers are not required to provide smoke breaks for employees. So it's dependent on company policy.
Oh, okay.
But that's crazy. If that was still around, how long were how long? Okay, breaks from 5 to 20 minutes must be counted as hours worked. Whoa. So that's uh
30 your day. So
this
that's
includes short periods. Okay, so this is just like um breaks in general. So this could be smoke breaks, restroom breaks, phone call, coffee, drink, snacks. So like you're allotted like 5 to 20 minutes depending on the company.
yeah, I think that what while the private sector for sure should be doing it, and I think that I think that's starting to come around, right? Like I think that some companies are starting to, you know, have gyms or whatever, or some companies are starting to have treadmills or like a Peloton in their offices. Like I think there's a push for it, and I think it's great.
Hmm.
But that is one of those things where it's like I think that as much as limited government and all the libertarian argument, that's something that should be implemented. I'm fully on board with the federal government saying you should have to work out, or you should have to not work out, but like you should have to have some level of physical activity throughout your day.
Mhm.
And I don't know, as
Yeah,
like
I mean, and you can twist it in. It's just like, yeah, you're gonna have a healthier employee. There's already a million articles about like why fitness is good for your brain and why fitness makes you more productive. So if you implement that, you have theoretically a better employee in the long run. So like if you want to keep somebody around for a long period of time doing good consistent work, you should give them 45 minutes to go work out in the middle of the day.
I will say though, I guess as devil's advocate to my own point, as you know, being in the military, and even though we have a annual fitness test, and you know, there's some kind of physical requirements, there are still plenty of people in the U.S. military that are far from physically healthy. Right, like that. There's still a level of
But they're
self
better than the
responsibility.
average population. They're
Correct.
better
Yeah,
than the average private sector because there is something looming over their head where they still have to pass a physical. It's like it doesn't matter if they barely pass, but they still have to pass it.
that's true. The like the worst of the worst in the military can still probably do at least 10 to 20 push-ups, right? Like there's it is
Yeah,
crazy to me
yeah,
that like
dude, that's insane. That's insane. There's people in the private sector that like can't walk up a flight of stairs.
yeah,
Something to think about.
I'm I don't know. I don't know how many countries have like a mandatory like physical component. Um, but like I said, I know China has some. I know I'm sure some European countries have some level of physical standard, but I don't know. I think that it's one of those things where it's like unless you have a good excuse, like a legitimate, you know, doctor note
Yeah,
to say you're
I think
exempt.
it's like a like it's great for the average population. There's Sweden is one of the many countries that require employees to exercise at work. Oh, improve productivity, profitability, and build camaraderie. Wow. Anyways, yeah, let's just. I've heard a lot of great things about Sweden. Let's just go to Sweden. Let's just ditch
Well,
America.
so what I've heard about, I don't know if this applies to Sweden, but I've heard about Norway, right? Um, because that's always the argument, right? People always talk about healthcare and physical fitness and
Mhm.
social programs in all those countries. But I will say something that they were saying is that basically why that is the case is like a couple of the reasons. Like one of them is that it's basically prohibitively expensive to go there anymore, right? Anyone who's been there, like a Norwegian citizen who's been there for generations, you know, has a house, has all this stuff, has all the access. But I think like
Mhm.
houses there are in the millions now. Like it's so incredibly expensive to immigrate there. I mean, I think it was Norway. They were saying it has like essentially zero immigration
Oh,
into the
oh my
country.
gosh. Average price of a home in Norway is about $250,000.
Yeah. So like it's
What's the
really
U.S.?
it's incredibly expensive. Um,
Wait, hold up. The median sales price of a home in the United States was 419,000.
okay, that's crazy.
Wait, what? That's the average? There's no way.
I mean, you have to think there's plenty of like houses in Cali are like, you know, upwards of a million a lot of the time.
I guess okay, that does make sense. I am living in probably one of the cheapest areas to buy a house, and that's the cost of like pretty like a nice house. That's about like what our house is. It's a little bit less than that, but like that's like a nice house in this area. That's crazy, dude. I'm never getting a house.
Yeah, I mean,
How the hell?
that's also another thing is that our generation's never going to own property, right? Well,
Dude,
also
I'm
in the
moving to
States,
Norway.
also in
I'm
the
going to
US.
Norway. It's half the price. The average house is half the price. A little.
I mean, so another thing I did hear about Norway though is they brought it up as a negative, but I kind of, as we've established, I believe it's positive, even as cold-hearted as it's going to sound. But they were
Hmm.
saying, someone was telling me that they were up in Norway, and he was saying he had this experience. He saw a girl like OD on the street, right?
Hmm.
And he turned to like the Norwegian guys he was with. He was, hey, like someone call the police, right? We need to get an ambulance
Hmm.
for this chick. She's ODing, and they were like, no, they're not going to come. If they hear like there's a like if you're like a drug addict ODing, they're not going to use their social resources to save your life, right? So like
Hmm.
it's kind of online with like what we were talking about months
It's a
ago,
little
where right
intense.
after the
It's a
three
little
strike kind of
intense.
thing. But like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a fan of like the into the system. You get like a mark on your body. You're just like, okay, you've had one OD. You get like a secret mark that nobody can see.
yeah, it's like a an ultraviolet only like tattoo or something, and like the
Yeah.
EMT walks up, they scan it, they're like, oh, guess we're
Well,
leaving.
they've had three strikes. They're done.
Uh,
No, yeah, that's crazy. That's absurd. Because like everybody has like one bad day, and some people's bad day is an OD.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if everyone has that, but
I,
I
I'm not saying everybody has a bad day, but everybody's bad days can look differently.
yeah, I but yeah, like basically the point I'm making is like they were bringing up the person I was talking with bringing up like it's not the socialist paradise that like a lot of people talk about, right? Because like
Yeah.
a lot of people who tout the Norwegian and Swedish systems is they're like, oh yeah, like drugs are decriminalized and healthcare for everyone.
Hmm.
There's a reason why it works is because in the
Small.
U.S. like yeah, it's expensive, but like you you can have healthcare, right? Like you can call 911, they will take you to the hospital and save your life. You might be in crippling debt for the rest of your life, but like you'll be alive, right? Like that's um
Yeah, but then I don't know if that's much better because then you're like, oh yeah, I've got $300,000 worth of medical bills. I work a minimum wage job. I'm never paying this off.
m- but also like at the same time it's you'll get like I think Canada's the one that people talk about a lot. Like in Canada, um, people will be waiting for like a routine appointment or like a what's the screening for? It's just an X-ray for cancer. It's just X-rays, right?
No, no, it's like MRI and
Oh,
CT
MRIs.
scans.
Okay. Do X-rays not? I know it's just
X-ray.
bone.
Well, it's for certain types of
Certain.
cancers, like if it was like a bone cancer and you have like bone growths, then
Mm,
yeah, you would see it on an X-ray.
okay. But like for example, like um, another story was like someone was like waiting for a follow-up to a cancer screening in like Canada. This is the same guy talking about Norway who was talking about like a friend he had in Canada, and it was like a follow-up appointment was like 6 months or like a 6 month wait.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just go
Yep.
to the U.S. to get actual treatment. It's a lot more money, but you can actually get treated and
Yeah.
have your life saved. So it's like there's going to be that trade-off regardless of where you go. It's just um, whether you're willing to be in crippling debt for generational debt, or you're willing to just die.
Canada's just a lot like the U.S., except they pay more in taxes and then receive even less than what we do.
Yeah, like
It's kind of crazy. Actually, I will say I went to Toronto once, and Toronto's like it's comparable to Chicago. I definitely preferred Toronto over Chicago. It was much cleaner. It smelled nicer.
were we in
The
Toronto
people were.
or Ontario for formal?
We were in Windsor.
Windsor. It's close to Ontario, isn't it?
It's kind of close to Toronto. It's like
Oh,
another
okay.
2 hour drive to
Okay.
Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Canada's a whole nother can of worms. I'd say that. I don't know many people who are like, well, actually, no, there's plenty of people who are like, yeah, I'm going to move to Canada if something doesn't work on the States. How many of those people have actually moved to Canada? Well, not many.
Probably not many. Just because, yeah, it's Canada is just the U.S. except more expensive and less rights. So go for it, I guess, if that's what you want. At least with like the cool idea about like Sweden and Norway and a lot of those Nordic countries that do have a more socialist structure is that every everything that I've heard and read about the people that live there, they said they don't mind paying the higher taxes because they visibly see where their tax money is going.
Yeah.
They have cleaner cities, they have free healthcare, even though it's not the best healthcare in the world because it's here in the United States. Um, it's still healthcare, and like they just don't have as many concerns about living through their day-to-day life. Whereas like I feel like Americans are just significantly more stressed, living paycheck to paycheck, hoping that nothing bad happens. Like I know how crippling it is for me and like my family if like one of our cars has to go into like the auto shop. It's like, oh shit, this is like we have to go get like a new transmission or a new car or like a tire fell off or something goofy like that. It's like it adds a significant amount of stress just to have those financial burdens.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be more on the page of like those kinds of social programs, but I don't know. I think it's also one of those things where it's like it's the U.S., right? Like we have what's the population of Norway, like or
It's
Sweden?
it's gonna be like it's gonna be the size of it's gonna be like half of California. It's gonna be like 30 or 40 million.
Population of Sweden is 10 million. Population of Norway
Oh,
is
okay.
5.5.
Yeah,
So like
so we're talking about countries that are smaller than like Texas. Like both of those countries combined are smaller than half of Texas.
Norway is smaller than Indiana, right? Like
Yeah.
it, and I think that's one of those. I mean, I won't pretend to be a political scientist or know how these things work, but like I just don't think at scale.
I mean, you're making things up just like they are. So
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's making things up. But like I think for the US, for 300 million people, for every single person being completely different genetically and ethnically and everything, I don't think people really think
and then
about
just
like it doesn't work.
just culturally too. Like people in Indiana are completely different than people in Texas, and people in Texas are completely different from California, and Californians are different than people from New York. Like every nearly every state has their own cultural identity. Even ones that are bordering. Like I lived up in Michigan for a couple months, and like people are just slightly different there. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like people talk about how like the federal government's like doesn't really do anything or like like you were saying taxes people in like Cali or New York they're like yeah I pay all these taxes and I don't see any and people are still dying and pooping in the streets right like it's like I don't know I think the US does have a problem of we're too big to deal with those issues and I think it also plays into like when we were talking about you know interventionism or the US sticking its nose into other countries like we're we're so busy worrying about the world that we don't got time to fix our own problems.
Yeah. I that's my biggest hope with all of this fraud and wasteful spending thing that's going on. I'm just hoping that of the money and of the programs that do get cut, the money does come back into the United States. That's what I'm hoping for a little bit.
Well, I mean, like it'll be in the United States because it'll be in like the Congress's pocket, but at least it'll be stateside, right?
Well, I'm hoping that happens a little bit less. Lobby lobbying is so gross. It's so gross.
I, I, as much as I'm not as like extremist in my views or like as set in my ways as I was, I think there is something to be said about um like a reset, right? Like I think like if we were to start from scratch, we'd do a lot better than we are doing. I think that is a stance I'll take. I think if we were to build up the federal government from
If you,
from
if you were to
scratch,
if you were to see all of the mistakes that were made before and all of the shortcomings, you could probably make a better system if constructed well and if transferred well. But that's just impossible to do.
well, so the problem with the government, this is from a micro scale playing up all the way into the higher reaches. But someone that
Hmm.
I work with, he was telling me basically how the military works, right? So like at a more micro scale, he was like, yeah, you know, I come into a job, all the programs are messed up, everything's messed up, the system doesn't work, I fix all of it, and then I fix all of it and leave it here, right? The next guy gets here and he goes, oh, everything works perfectly. I don't have to do anything. And then all of those good initiatives and all of those fixes go away because there's no maintenance put into them, there's no updating, there's no thought put into it. And by three
Mm-hmm.
people down, everything's back to terrible and how it was. Right? So that's just how the government kind of works, right? Like, because it's if you walk into a job and all you have to do is nothing because the last guy did it all before you, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna just 10 years down the road, you're like, oh, I'm 10 years out of date. Nothing works anymore. But like, I'll leave it to the next guy to fix it. It's not my problem.
Not your problem. No, I yeah. Hmm. So how would you prevent that? What systems would need to be in place to prevent that?
I mean, I think one of the things is one, just you know, whether or not people support the current administration or Elon or Doge or whatever. I think the initiative of actually looking at whether it works and maybe getting rid of some people who have been there for 30 years and don't really care about their job, that might be a stepping stone, right? Like like,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm a proponent for tearing it down and then looking at it and then building it back up,
Yeah.
right? Like that's something that
Because
I do think is a solution.
Elon's been getting a lot of hate. He gets a lot of hate everywhere. And like I don't agree with him on everything that he's doing, but like the idea of like seeing wasteful spending and people being in career jobs that aren't producing anything, that aren't beneficial to the company that they're working for, the government, they're not beneficial to the federal government, um, and just taking money away, taking tax dollars away. Um, like just we have this bloated system. We've been spending more money than we've been making for literally forever. And if the federal government was any other company, it would be shut down in 2 weeks. It would run for 2 weeks, and then it's been poorly managed, with no good objectives, no good outlook, and nothing's been done. It can't pass a single audit. It's never passed an audit. Um, yeah, as soon as you can't pass an audit, the CEO of the company gets put in jail. So I don't feel like if we're held to the same stipulation, if the government were held to the same stipulation that we are, I feel like that would be beneficial to the same standards. I don't see what's like wrong with that. I don't see what's like wrong with that vision. And if you're cutting out like mostly bad programs or like mostly bad like funding, I don't see why that's bad or evil.
That's
And it's like weird because like they're going like he's being viewed as like a Nazi, but he's doing literally the exact opposite of like an authoritarian Nazi would do. He's giving less power to the government. He's giving them less money.
well,
It's literally
that's
it's
always been the
literally
funny
quite
thing
the opposite.
when people the funniest thing is always to me when like I mean right, a little bit political here, but when people call, for example, Trump or Elon or people on the right who are like shutting all these things down, they're like, "Oh, he's a fascist." Like, do you like have you heard of a dictionary or like have you heard of history? Like are those
Have you seen the political compass? Authoritarian Nazi, libertarian ideas, completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
and I think there's a level of I think it's projecting. I think projecting is the biggest thing. But like when people call them a fascist, they're like, "Oh, he's a fascist. He's shutting down government programs to help." I was like,
Yeah.
hold up, he's shutting down government programs and like implementing more oversight into their organization. Like that's fascism to you? Yeah, that's always been insanity to me. Like that's why as soon as someone says like, "Oh, he's a fascist," I I'm sorry, like their opinion means nothing to me anymore. Your
As
opinion,
soon yeah, I scroll on X and I basically just go until I see that somebody's being called a fascist, and then I'll read what they say about like why he's being a fascist, and then I like will just be like, yeah, these things are the complete opposite of fascism, and then I put my phone away because I get frustrated. I'm just like, okay, that's enough. That's enough X for today.
speaking of current events though, how about that whole Ukraine situation? How's that? What are your what are your
Uh,
takes? Everyone's seen the video, I assume.
Yeah. So everybody's watched the last 5 minutes, but nobody's watched the full 40 minutes before prior to that event. It was a very nice and cordial conversation for 40 minutes.
Did you watch the full thing?
I watched bits and clips of. I watched probably 20 minutes total of it, and it just seemed like a normal meeting for the first half of it, and then it just devolved into chaos because I don't know. This administration is very much against just sending out money to people, and like the ultimate goal, right, for the Trump administration is peace, whereas like Zelensky, from what it seems like, he's not. He wants fair peace, and fair peace to him is a little bit of revenge and then some peace.
Yeah. Uh, it's just always crazy when like, I mean, this is when you start to see like the identity politics come in, right? It's like you have to believe
Mm-hmm.
what you have to disagree with whatever the other party is saying, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so you'll get people who disagree with the current administration, right? Like the same people who are like, we're fighting this war in Afghanistan, we're fighting this pointless war, we're spending all this money, we're sending all these
Yeah,
lives, you know, and then now they're like, well, wait, why don't you want to do that with Ukraine? They're like, you should be doing that with Ukraine, like, or you should be doing that with Israel. Like,
I mean, like, have we not learned our lessons about like just giving other countries our money and our equipment to fight our enemies? Have we not like learned our historical lesson on how that just hasn't been good for us? That's not been good for the country. That's how Al Qaeda got started. We funded a lot of Al Qaeda to do our dirty work in Russia, and then Al Qaeda took our weapons and took our money and then attacked us.
and now the Taliban. I searched up the number because I wanted to. I was curious. Now the Taliban has the $7 billion worth of military equipment that we left behind when we pulled out of
Yeah,
Afghanistan. Like,
yeah, yeah. Terrible. Yeah, I mean, I'm very anti-war, and the longer that it goes on, the more people are going to die, the more resources that are going to be lost. And I think peace as soon as possible is the way to do it. I don't think funding for ongoing conflict to eventually get to peace is the right way to go. But that's just my like I get the idea that like Russia attacked, Russia did invade. They are the bad people in this. But we cannot keep funneling money towards this country because at some point, if this goes on long enough and we continue this conflict and this is multiple years down the road, we're going to get other countries involved. Once other countries get involved, we get involved. And I don't want to get involved. I, as a citizen, do not want to see another war.
yeah,
The crazy concept. I don't want to go to war. And the best way to stop future war is the best way to prevent future war is to stop a current war.
and the crazy thing is, it's not even like a lot of people. I think, like I said, a problem with what I used to do is like you kind of idealize it, right? If
Hmm.
if you were to see, I mean, it's not classified videos, it's not secret videos, it's videos that are like on the web, right? Like I saw one pop up on Instagram because Instagram is just full of war crimes and homicide. Um, there was like a video of a Ukrainian drone dropping like I want to say it was like something like napalm, right? Some kind of like flammable onto like
Hmm.
a tree line of a bunch of Russian troops, just burning them alive. I was like, that's what war is now. It's not war is not, you know, hey, like there's that ridge there. We're gonna fight. It's we're gonna fight these people hand to hand, and we're gonna take. No, it's if you go to war, you're getting lit up by a guy 300 miles away. Right? It's
Yeah. It's yeah, you're killing lives for the sake of killing lives. It's not it's what is I it's been going on for so long that I've completely lost the plot. What is the purpose? Why did Russia invade Ukraine? What is their goal?
so So this is kind of one of the few things I've like heard about or read a little about, and this is well, it's kind of plays into like you were saying how Ukraine doesn't want like they want a fair end of the war, right?
Hmm.
One of the terms I remember seeing was like they wanted to be part of NATO, right? That was like the initial push is wants to be in NATO, right? And like Trump
Hmm.
immediately said like that's off the table, right? Because like and a few of the rational people who were kind of like looking at it, they were like, yeah, like you know why Russia invaded Ukraine? It's because they were trying to become part of NATO and Russia doesn't want to be surrounded by enemies. Like NATO, the
Hmm.
organization full like that was built to be Russia's enemy. They don't want a neighbor that's part of that organization, right? And it's like,
They don't want any more neighbors.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
it's so like because I was also of the same mindset, like, oh, like they just invaded for no reason, and I don't agree with the invasion of Ukraine. Like, I'm not saying I agree with it, but like when you look at the rationale behind it, the rationale was like, I mean, it'd be like if the U.S. was hanging out, and then suddenly Mexico was like, hey, we want to be part of ISIS, like I think,
Yeah.
or we want to be a Soviet outpost from Russia, like
Yeah.
the U.S. would take issues with that as well, right? Like, so it's like
Yeah.
whether you agree with how they did it or what they actually did, like there is a some level of rationale behind it, um, as like a sovereign nation to not be surrounded by enemies. I mean
I
that's
mean,
what,
that's fair. That's a completely logical thing. You don't want to be surrounded by enemies.
and I think that's what a lot of like Americans who like I said, not supporting it, but like a lot of Americans who completely or like Russia invaded for no reason, they're just doing this to kill people, like don't get it, because
Hmm.
the U.S. is not surrounded by enemies.
Hmm.
European countries, all that's I mean that's why every single major conflict has been over there, because every country over there has every country around another country over there is its enemy, right? So
Yeah.
like that.
That's fair. But no, that's interesting too. Another factor is just like the money that's being put into NATO by like the United States government. It is interesting that Trump was basically like, no, don't be a part of NATO. We're not letting you in NATO, but yet we're the biggest funding source for NATO.
Well, because if they become part of NATO, then it's do you know, are you familiar with like Article 5? That's like the only article I'm familiar with, just being
No.
military. But Article 5 of NATO is like the one that's always gets talked about, right? Guys like the military always talks about it. So Article 5 is if a NATO member is under attack, other NATO members will come to their aid military wise. Like they will bring their
Okay.
militaries in. So like
Yeah.
if Ukraine becomes part of NATO, that means that Russia is fighting every like the other countries don't
All
really
the
have a basis right now, right? Like it's that's
Yeah.
why.
So it is the United States. They would be fighting the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Turkey, Spain, Poland, Netherlands, Norway, Greece, Belgium, Denmark, Romania, Portugal, Hungary, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Croatia, Estonia. Yeah, they're fighting. Yeah, they'd be fighting everybody. Yeah, but why are we? I don't know. I feel like we're just putting the United States itself is putting a ridiculous amount of funding into it for something that's over the pond, across the pond.
Like we talked about before, the fact that the U.S. is like the largest monetary supporter of any European conflicts, and
Yeah,
Ukraine and NATO, like
yeah.
that's
The
insanity.
I have the defense expenditure from this is 2018, but we gave $685 billion. We were the leader. The second closest was the United Kingdom. Gave them $55 billion.
And it's funny too because I clicked on an article because, like I said, I don't read up on the news, or I'm not very tied in. But like I saw some article that was clearly like bashing on the current administration, in support for Ukraine and all that, and they were like, yeah, like
Hmm.
the U.S. doesn't want to support its allies. Well, one, Ukraine is not an ally by nature of NATO. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, like the U.S. doesn't want to support these countries. And look, they said in the article right underneath the chart. I'm pretty sure the chart you're
Hmm.
looking at. They said underneath it. They
Hmm.
said, look at how much the UK is giving. I was like, UK. I was like, can you read a graph? Like,
Yeah.
that's like they were like, yeah, like the UK is giving this much money, although the US is still number one. I'm like, by by a lot, by a
By
lot.
a lot. And then there's also like there's a graph here that's breaking it down 2023 by GDP. So it's just like what the percentage that the money is that the country is producing. We're giving 3.5% of our GDP to NATO. The UK is giving 2.1%. So it's like they're not even paying their fair share of what they're making.
Yeah, I guess the worst thing in all of this is just that like that people don't have that cognitive dissonance. Like that people don't realize like the absurdity of what they're saying, right? Like, not to place that, but I think this is a fair statement to make. I think the left has always been trying to say like, oh, the right is warmongers, or like they're trying to start conflicts or do all this, but now they're saying we need to be involved and be the world police, right? Like,
There's definitely been like a mentality shift between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and then like conservatives versus liberals. Where like, if you were more liberal, like liberals from like the '60s and '70s look a lot more like conservatives nowadays in terms of what they believe.
yeah,
Where they
stay out of
believe
other
like
countries.
stay out of other countries. Yeah, like I don't get it. I maybe it's just the simpleton in me. Why can't we just have world peace? Why can't we just all get along and trade, make fair deals, and everybody can live happy? Why? It's the ignorance in me, Dave.
Yeah, I mean that was what I said before. Like I brought this up probably a year ago, right? I think where I mentioned um I don't understand why Russia invaded Ukraine, right? I was like, I don't understand that. Why doesn't everyone just focus on themselves and just live lives and go to work and work out? I was like, I don't get it. But then like I, kind of was educated a little more on the nuances of it. But
Hmm.
I still do hold that thought. I'm like, if everyone just stopped, like what? It's just insane to me that like the U.S. and China, the U.S. and Russia, like that one country would be like, oh, this country's a world power. They're making all this money. Like, who cares? Make your
Hmm.
own money. Like, I don't know. Like, it's not a.
Yeah.
I don't get why that's like a. This country's making a lot of money. They're a threat. We're gonna build up WMDs. Like what is the thought
Like,
process
what's
there?
crazy? What's crazy is that like our population isn't even that crazy. We have 360 million people. There's 8 billion people in the world. Like we're a small fraction of the world population. There's ways to make money. Just because we're doing it better than you, because we're stealing more from the citizens. I guess I don't know, but we have low tax. I don't know. It's so interesting. Other countries should be more rich, is what I'm learning. Other countries should be more corrupt, and we should be less corrupt. That's what I'm learning.
I mean, I, it's one of those things where like that's why I think it's just there needs to be a reset. Like the current way things are done just needs to be torn down. Where like if everyone just focused more on like being more physically and mentally and spiritually fit and making sure their
Hmm.
families are physically, spiritually, mentally fit, there'd be a lot less worrying about this other country making more money. Or
We want to go back to. I want to go back to caveman days. Hunt and gather, hang out with the family.
I mean, there is something to be said about like the legitimate return to monkey, and right, like I don't believe in the. I saw some. Are you familiar with Casually Explained?
I know. I watched that video yesterday
Okay, yeah. So
where he
like,
talked about the political compass.
yeah, the
Yeah.
political compass, and he had like the third dimension, and he was like, yeah, like technologically or whatever, and I was like, yeah, like there. I know people joke about the whole return to monkey and the whole like um I mean Ted Kaczynski, all of that. But
Hmm.
there's I think a lot of what the older generations don't realize. It's like there's a lot of people that are our age and below and a little above us that like we're not really like the brainwashed ones are different, right? Like if you're like really, you know, I fight for this thing, it's hard to convince you.
Hmm.
But most of us are a little disillusioned with the with the hey, you should be involved in world events and everyone should be, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. But like,
No, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I have the personal philosophy where I want to take care of one myself first. Well, let's flip the order. My family first, me second, my community, my local community. So this is like friends and people that I see on a regular basis. And then once I have everything like that's like perfect, then I start caring about like other things outside of my direct control. But like I feel like like depending on the ideology, they see it the other way, where they want to help everybody else before they help themselves. And we just know from basic psychology, you can't do that. You have to be stable. You have to be okay before you can go out helping others.
I mean, that's the entire issue with the
Jordan
whole.
Peterson said, "Make your goddamn bed. You got to make your bed. You got to clean your room before you can fix the world."
But that is the problem, though. It's there's a reason why, like for example, I won't say right or left, just the interventionist like policy is so appealing, or it's so easy to get people on that page because
Hmm.
it's hard. It's hard to like. It's easy to make an emotional appeal, right? You'd be like, oh, you don't care about people dying across the world, like you don't. That's not an issue for you, like.
Yeah,
No, to be honest, no. Like if my family's struggling and I have to, like you were saying, people who have to pay a medical bill or
yeah,
like something like that for their family member. If I can't afford to pay the medical bills for my family, no, I don't care if someone else
yeah.
has that same issue across
It's
the
like,
world.
no, somebody in my direct family is currently dying. I care more about that family member than I do about people that I've never met. I'm sorry. And same thing goes for my community. Like, if people are dying in my community, I have a much bigger issue and would want to take action for that, as opposed to some country that nobody knows how to spell the name of. That most people and that most people can't point out on a map. I'm sorry, I don't care.
Yeah, you remember that one argument that I had with Piyush back in college? This is
Was it the
probably
AOT? It was it the AOT one?
it wasn't quite AOT. AOT was with actually more contentious with a lot of guys in our group, but it was like an argument one time I brought up. I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna treat my friends better than I treat strangers. And he was like, "Oh, that's a terrible thing to say." Like he was like, "I don't agree with that. I treat everyone exactly the same." I was like, "That like if someone were to say that, I'm like, I don't want to be friends with you. I'm like, I don't want to be
Yeah,
treated. If I'm your friend, I do not want you to treat me like you would treat a stranger. That is
yeah,
insanity, right? Like it.
yeah.
Not to throw him under the bus. I'm not, but like
Shut
that's.
up, Piyush. Hopefully you're listening.
But like,
I'm sending him the clip.
but like that was like kind of a stance I've always had, and I don't know. I'm sure there's some like a lot of factors that play into that. You know, whether it's the kind of growing up in a culturally Chinese family, you know, like the whole like family in Asia in general, family is a very big component of day-to-day life.
Mhm,
Um, maybe it's that, or maybe it's just like, you know, family values, but it's just insane to me that's you can't say that anymore. You know, like it's not
mhm,
accepted to say that you don't care about the rest of the world before everyone in your life. Because you're selfish. You're selfish if you believe that. That's what everyone says. You're a bad person.
yeah, yeah. I'm no good, terrible, bad person that I care about the people that I spend my time with. Ooh. Like, yeah, I get the sentiment of wanting to be nice and like be hospitable and like not just be like a complete dick to random people that you talk to. But I'm not treating them with like the same level of respect, or like they're not getting my friendly privilege that my friends get because they haven't earned it. They don't deserve it. Like, I'll be nice. I'll be nice. I'll go out to a bar, buy a stranger a drink if we have like a good conversation. But that's about it. That's all you get from me. You get a $3 beer. Congratulations, you made good conversation.
Yeah. Or a drunk cigarette. You bum a
or,
cig off a guy at a bar.
I, yeah, it's a trade deal. I get him a drink, he gives me a cig. See, why can't the world just be like that? Why can't that's an exchange of goods and services?
Uh, yeah, let's just go back to the barter system, and it's just cigarettes and beer. That's all we should operate on. It should be a
That's
prison. It should be a prison bartering system. Ramen noodles and cigarettes.
it's perfect. Man, we really messed up. We really messed up with the Industrial Revolution.
Somewhere along the line, I mean, it really is like the older I've gotten. Like you know, back when I was in high school and I was just spouting off Ben Shapiro and Peterson everywhere and not actually like really thinking about it for myself. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't have
Mhm.
believed it as much. But like as you grow and mature, like we said, um, we've matured and I've matured and don't hope for war. Like as you mature, you realize I'm like I just don't I don't care about being a billionaire and like doing all these crazy things. I just want a simple life, and I hate that. I think it's a self-deterministic kind of cycle, right? Because no one who ends up in government is gonna, well, not no one. The vast majority of people who end up in power or positions of influence aren't of that mindset, right? Like there's a reason they pursue that. It's because they want something higher than themselves. They want to make some kind of difference. Whereas the rest
Yeah,
of us,
they want to make an impact on the world.
yeah, and
And
it's
I just want to make an impact on my family and my local community. I do not care about the rest of the world.
I think that's one of the problems too, is that like the whole representation, like yeah, it's like Democratic Republic, we have representatives, all that, but like they're not really representative. There's a reason there's a whole silent majority. There's a reason there's like when vote the silent majority, right? Like there's a reason that exists. It's because representatives by nature, and people who are seeking power and people who are seeking prestige and people who are seeking influence, like they're not representative of the normal person. A normal person doesn't want those things. I'll say that. Like I know people hate the term normal now, like because
Mhm.
oh, it's discriminatory to say normal, but a normal person does not want to be involved with everything else in the world. A normal person should not be, at least.
No, a normal person just wants to go to work and then go to Chick-fil-A after work. That's like their reward. They get a reward. They want to have a job that they don't completely hate. They want to finish their job and do something that they probably not good for them, but it makes them a little happy on the inside. And then they want to go home and just hang out with their family. That's what a normal person wants. Maybe watch some Netflix, maybe go to the gym, maybe maybe do something somewhat productive. You have like a hobby or something that you can do. That's what a normal person wants. They just want to live their life, do the things that they want to do, and have enough money to do those things.
Yeah, if I describe like a day of like I'm like, hey, you go to work, 9 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever. You go to the
Mhm.
gym and then you go to Taco Bell. If that doesn't sound like a good day to you, I don't want to associate with you. If that doesn't, if if you don't think or substitute Taco Bell with Chili's, Applebee's, Texas Road, like something like that,
Yeah,
right? Nothing high end, nothing high end. We're not talking no Outback Steakhouse. We're talking free rolls, right?
we're talking CC's Pizza. That's what.
Oh yeah, like if that doesn't bring you joy, you're not part of my life. You
Yeah,
you don't have a place.
yeah. I don't know. I think some people should just sit back because navigating. I think that's one of the biggest. Maybe I'm theorizing here. Maybe the complexities of every individual is it's a lot. A lot of people's time, especially in their younger years, and I'm kind of going through this now, is doing soul searching and figuring out who you are and who you want to be and who you want and like how do you navigate this craziness of a world. And I just a theory. I feel like the people that go out and want to help other people and want to contribute to like international like events or like just things going on across the world. I feel like those people haven't done enough. They haven't spent enough time with themselves, and I don't know if they're like scared to do that, but they neglect their own personal growth to help somebody else because that makes them feel good.
I mean, that's why you get like stories of, whether it be politicians or public sector, you get like cops or military, or like you get people that are pursuing this career where they're like, most people when you think of that career, you're like, oh, you joined it to help people, right? Like a police officer or a
Mhm,
military, like you joined it because you want to serve a greater purpose, you want to help your community.
mhm,
There's a reason why a lot of those people and a lot of those professions, not even most, not a majority, but there's a significant amount, multiple divorces, like family
mhm,
problems, monetary problems. It's because when you get
mhm.
so wrapped up in problems of others, you just, I mean, what was that stat? Like you can only have so many friends. Like there's like a certain number of like actual friends you can have, a certain number of like actual close connections you can have, because like
Yeah,
you're
it's like
we're not.
190. It's like 100. It's like 190 of people
Yeah, I
that
was I was thinking
are
200
like
or
100.
something was.
Yeah, it's like right under 200 people where it's like you know who they are, what they look like, and you kind of have like a fact that differentiates them from other people. And that's it. Like that's a high school. That's a small high school of like a graduating class. That's not too many people.
Yeah, and, and I'm sure we brought this up, but like human beings were never wired to be connected with the rest of the world. We're like human beings, tribes, clans, villages, whatever. Like we were never meant to solve the world's problems or even be worried or even know about the world's problems. So like
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe that's something that maybe it's just like a transitory phase. Maybe it's like right now human beings just have to figure out how to be a part of like a species rather than a part of a village. I'm sure
Hmm.
that's a proponent of it, but like that's kind of why I hate like when people are talking about all these like grand ideas and I'm like we haven't been in this world long enough, this world of being connected with other countries. We haven't been in this world long enough to know what to do. We straight up no one has the answers because no one has lived through it. We're living through it right now, and to think
Yeah.
that the right decision is to intervene in foreign wars and give aid, like that's a crazy thing to say. That's such an ignorant
Yeah.
stance to take.
That's being said by the host of Illogically Ignorant.
Yeah, that's right. I said that so we could have
If you're
credits
calling
roll.
if you're calling people ignorant, holy shit.
Yeah, that's right.
Those people are in trouble.
Pot,
But no,
meat, cattle.
I so the number that you're talking about was Dunbar's number, and it's 150 stable relationships. Some people can have more, some people can have less, but that's like the average. So like 150,
That's a
that's a
lot of people.
decent amount. That's a lot of people. And I did this thing the other day where I went through my Instagram and I stopped following just people, and my criteria for unfollowing people was just like, okay, have I talked to them in the past 10, or if I have I talked to them to in any degree for the past 7 years? Yes or no? If it's no, they immediately just went away. If if I haven't talked to them, or if I couldn't remember anything about them outside of like their name, gone. If I didn't recognize their face, gone. So like I cut off just 200 people from my Instagram the other day.
I mean, that's another topic in itself, the whole social media connectedness. But yeah, like the it's an illusion, right? Like all of it, whether global news, social media,
Hmm.
international calling, like it's all an illusion to where everyone thinks they know everyone, and everyone thinks we should help everyone. Like it's if everyone were to do that, I'm we would I think a lot of people would be really shocked. Then a lot of people who are following 2,500 people on Instagram will be pretty shocked to find out they don't know 90% of those people.
Yeah. I mean, then that really shouldn't come as a surprise, just because we don't have the capacity to do that. Nobody does. So why should that be the normal? Why is that the normal that people are following thousands of people on Instagram, and maybe they've talked to them one time, maybe.
Do you?
I've done that.
You're,
I've done that before, where like I've met people, and I'll have like a good conversation, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, just add me on Instagram.
hmm Yeah,
And then but it's a person because I'm in a different state in a different city, and I'm not going to see this person ever again. But I instinctually do that. I do that quite frequently, actually.
yeah. I have a few followers. Like one was on my 21st. The guy that bought us green tea shots that we met in the bathroom at a bar, right? Like I followed him on Instagram. I think a few of us followed him. He followed us back. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I do the same thing, right? I'm not immune to interacting with new people and having some level of connection. But um, actually, a question to pose is: do you think that like let's say 500 years down the road, that because of this connectedness, like because it's one world now, like it's one society now, like do you think that humans will evolve to just have more people? Like, do you think that number will just like triple? The Dunbar's
Yeah,
number thing, or
I think it'll definitely go up, or it'll be because 500 years is a decent amount of time. We might just pendulum back, where very similar to like where I don't know, I don't know. 500 years. The world's changed so much in the past 100 years, where it's if you were to show somebody 100 years ago, what does that put us in? 1925. So roaring 20s. If you were to show them, they're loving the stock market. If you were to show them like NFTs or like meme coins, their minds would be blown.
I mean, yeah,
I don't
because
know.
progress is exponential. So I'm sure like in 200 years, a human will be a human in 200 years will pretty much be unrecognizable to us. I think that's like a safe bet to make. Like who
What are
people
they gonna
are,
look like? Is everybody gonna be 800 pounds?
yeah, unrecognizable because everyone's gonna have eaten their neighbors. Everyone's gonna be three times. No, they'll still know the same amount of people,
Are we
but they'll
gonna
have.
be like in Wall-E where we're all just floating on chairs and everyone's 300 pounds overweight and can't bear their own weight?
I
Is
think
that
it's
what
just
we're
gonna.
gonna see?
I think it's just gonna stop being a bell curve. I think the bell curve is just gonna break down. We're just gonna get just extremes. It's just gonna be gym like fitness influencers and
Yeah,
gearheads and Wally people. I think that's
Wall-E
all we're gonna
people.
have.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, a
I
brave
wish I
new
had a time
world.
machine. I want to go 500 years in the future. I just want to see what's going on. Or no. I think that won't be an issue because of developments like Ozempic and um, weight loss drugs and muscle building drugs. I think everybody's just going to be absolutely yoked out of their mind, but no one's going to have to go to the gym to do it. I'm gonna go with the Mike Israetel approach, where
Yeah.
like I think medicine's just gonna go completely bonkers in the next couple 50 years, and I think we will flatten the obesity epidemic just through pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of good to like technological advance, right? Like, I think that there's a plenty of negatives, and I think that from a social standpoint and interactions with your community, I think that there's a lot of breakdown there. But I do think for like a quality of life day to day, not dying at 30 because of obesity, like I think that yeah, in in 100 years, I don't I wouldn't believe that people are dying from just pure obesity or like pure like starvation, right?
Hmm.
That's my guess, but
I
I don't
mean,
know. I
we've in the developed world we have conquered obe- uh, um
Starvation.
what is it? Starvation. That's the word. I was gonna say like underweight people, but that's not the correct word. But like yeah, we've conquered starvation, and we've done it so much that we've gone completely on the other end of the coin, where everybody's big and fat and happy. And yeah, I I think that'll come back the other way. But we'll see.
Yeah.
But back to your question about like Dunbar's number and switching and how we're all going to be connected. I don't know. How many people do you think there are going to be in 500 years? There's probably like a population calculator that we can do. But
Well,
if it's like roughly the same, if we gain like another 2 billion people, I think no, population's gonna decline a little bit because no one can afford kids.
I mean, yeah, in like Asia, there's plenty like I think China's having one. I know Japan's having a real bet. I think Japan and Korea are both like really
Yeah.
hurting.
Oh yeah. Because they had, especially in China, where they had the one child policy, and they were killing all. They were murdering all non boys.
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing that they're doing, or that they've stopped doing, but were doing
What's
for a
crazy
while.
is like the insane thing about things like that. Also to speak on like you were saying starvation and everything. Like yes, we've gotten rid of that, and like being in America, we don't really see that. But in all fairness, a lot of those things are really recent. I think that the one child policy was like around until like 2012 or something, right? Like it was like
Oh yeah. I remember reading a book about like a one child policy. It was like a fantasy thing about. It was like a fantasy book made for kids, but it was talking about like very applicable real world things that were going on in China, and it was a book about um, I think it was based in the U.S. or based in some fictitious country, but the government implemented a one-child policy. But this family grew up with two kids, and one of the kids just had to live up in the attic at all times because the government would come around and do frequent checks to see if there were kids around, or if they had more than one kid. And I can't remember the plot of the book because I think I read it in like fifth grade. But I remember him like running away and living in the forest for a little bit.
I looked it up. It was from 1979. So that's crazy because a decade, uh, a little around a decade before that, that was when my parents were born. So I would
Mhm.
not be in existence if things were to have shifted a decade before. But
Mhm.
it was in place until 2015. Like that's insane to think about. Like that's like a dystopian thing to think about that that was still in place until very recently.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just spamming through this calculator right now. Oh wait, but this doesn't change. Okay, so this is for the year 2100. There's going to be, and this is going to be, I think this is just going to be wrong too, just because I wasn't factoring in the number of children per
Yeah,
woman.
it's only going to be exponential growth, I think.
Yeah. So this one was showing exponential growth, but realistically, people are having less children now, just because it's too expensive to have kids. What I've noticed, the number that I've seen from a lot of people, it's like two kids, 1 to 2 kids, and you're not. That's not enough to replace your parents for exponential growth.
And I mean, even that, like, I think there's a lot of people that aren't even going to have kids, right? Like, I think that the
Oh
number
yeah,
of
that's
couples
been a
that
big
don't have
wave.
kids, yeah,
That's a big wave. Hmm. Oh well. How many kids are you gonna have, Dave? Do you think overpopulation is a concern, or are we gonna be underpopulated?
I think it's going to be underpopulated because like I have no desire to have more than two kids. It's just straight
Yeah,
up. I think two kids is a healthy number. I think one is too little because single children have complexes they
they're the
grow up
worst.
with.
They're the worst.
Four is four and five. Five is for sure too many. I think two and three is like the sweet spot. I think that's like a
Hmm.
you don't I think you have the least psychological like damage um from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But
Here's I'm gonna pull the Elon and just have, except with one wife, not multiple wives. I'm just gonna have a army of kids. I'm gonna have a kid pop out every 1 to 2 years
yeah, that'll be
for 20 years.
look, I'm not going to be able to financially sustain you. I already know that. You're every time
No,
we
it's
see
fine.
each
It's
other,
fine.
I'm going to have to pay for your meal.
No, it's fine. Here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna go out and become a farmer and just live off the land with my kids, and then I can use my kids for free labor.
That's true. I think maybe that's what will happen. In like 200 years it'll be under like we'll be so underpopulated that everyone's just going to start pumping out kids for farm labor.
Yeah. See, it's coming together.
AI can't solve that labor problem. So
No, but I can.
just pump out more kids.
No, I've met people that were a part of families that had like 9 to 10 people, like siblings, like 9 or 10 siblings, and that concept's kind of cool because it's like you have like a kid every 1 to 2 years, kind of like I was saying, and a couple twins in there, but like the older kids help raise the younger kids, and so like by the time some people are like going off to college or in high school, they can be teaching and helping raise the younger ones.
I think that's a cool structure. I think I
Like if
don't.
you have the money to do it, if you have the money to do it, and it's like not too much of like a financial burden, that concept seems pretty cool. Where you just have like a compound out in the middle of who knows where, you're farming, and you have areas for your kids to run around.
You
Dave,
just
I'm
want a
starting a
child
cult.
soldier army. Yeah, a cult.
I just want a cult, not with other people, just with my family.
I think that would be a cool con. Like I'd like that structure, right? Like I would never have 7 or more kids. Like to have to like actively think, oh, what's this one's name? Like that'd be a crazy concept to me. But like, but yeah, I think that structure is cool. Not for me, but
Well, no,
for other
that's
people.
where you just get rid of the names completely, and you just give them numbers or like
Numbers.
little letters of the alphabet.
I was gonna say I don't know
A.
if that's like constitutionally allowed, but there's Elon, so I guess you can. I guess it's allowed now.
Yeah.
You can just be alphanumeric.
Yeah. Yeah. Alpha 1, Beta 2. Let's see. Let's see in Greek.
Thir What is C in Greek?
Greek alphabet. We used to know the song, Dave.
I only know the phonetic alphabet. No, it's just Alpha, Bravo, Charlie.
Oh, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota,
Oh, so it's
kappa.
Gamma.
Hmm. So I'm just gonna work my way down to kappa, because we were kappas, and then kappa will be my favorite child.
How many numbers is that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10.
That's insane. You're you're gonna be fathering a kid at like 50,
That's
which
fine.
is not crazy because I do know I have people I work with that like I've talked to and they're like, yeah, like my dad was 55 when he had me or something like
The
that.
only issue is that if I gonna have the same wife, she's gonna have to be relatively young, because after the age of 35, that's considered a geriatric birth.
You just start at. Oh, we're getting into dangerous territory.
Start at 21.
Yeah, I think that's safe. I mean, people.
21 to 35.
I mean, we know people that are having kids at 21. Right? Like, I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's not too weird.
No, no.
I mean, you'll be 30, but
Not if I meet her today. I meet my wife today and I talk to her about this plan and she's in.
I'm sure you could find. I'm sure you could find a wife that'd be into that.
Probably. I can sweet talk my way into it. Been told I'm a good sweet talker.
You'll just have to show her this podcast as like justification. Be like, just listen to like the last hour, and then sign this contract, and then we can move forward.
What's the contract gonna say? What's the contract for?
You must provide a child every
Every
365 days.
But if you get twins or triplets, you can have some time off.
I'm off. You get a smoke break in between kids.
It's a long smoke break.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, make very strict rules in the contract.
you think that's legally enforceable?
No,
I'll know in 3 years.
there's no shot.
I'll
Yeah,
be your
you'll know in
lawyer.
3 years.
I'll be your lawyer. Like when you're suing your future wife for not providing you a child, your eighth child. I'll take it. I'll
What?
take it for everything she's got.
Well, that's where I file for divorce. I'm like, if you're not meeting the standard, I'm going to divorce you. I don't care how much I love you. You're not meeting the standard.
You're just gonna have mistresses and 20 kids.
No, I'm having wives. I'm planning for one, but if she breaks the rule, I'm sorry. I have to cut her off.
Genghis Khan lives again. Welcome back, Luke.
Yeah, my goal 300 years down the road is to have my family's genetics be a large part of the United States.
I'd like to think that. I'm like, yeah, I've got pretty decent genetics. Like, I'd be, I think I could be happy with spreading my genetics like through the populace. But that
Mm.
sounded really bad. Wow. Um, but like, but then I think I'm like, do I want more of me out there? Like, does the world need that? And I'm like, that's all right. I
I
think
mean, it's either you or somebody else. Think about the person that you dislike the most, and
all right,
they're making kids.
we can pitch in on that farm together. We'll both
Okay.
that farm gym we were talking about.
Yeah.
We'll
It's
have a
coming
huge.
together.
It'll be a full compound. It's just a gym, farmland, and 30 kids, and they just
Perfect. I'm in.
that'll be good. I'm excited. I'm excited for our future.
But now we just need to find wives that are willing to teach kids.
Yes, the
Because
easy
we're
part.
gonna homeschool these kids. I'm not letting the government put thoughts into their mind.
That's true,
Their
and also
information
I
comes
don't
from
think you can
me.
allow them to like be in the public system. I think these kids have to be off the record.
Oh
Like
yeah. These are gonna be like legitimately like super soldiers. We're starting TRT at the age of 3.
you're starting to replace their testosterone when they haven't started making it yet.
Yes.
I'm excited. It'll be generational. Generational podcasts. Imagine how many podcasts we could pump. We could have like 10 different podcasts going at once.
Yeah, yeah, and we could have all of our kids. Like, oh yeah, our kids have a
Yeah.
podcast, and the kids that are old enough to develop thoughts ready for a podcast. Which, to be fair, we're not quite there yet. So we'll give them a couple years to grow. But the kids that are like younger, they can do the work on the farm, so that we can eat dinner that night.
And then they
Coming
can have
together.
like infant illogically ignorant. It'll just be like 2 3 year olds on TRT.
Triple I. We got triple I
I3. Yeah, yeah,
going.
yeah. It'll just get longer and longer as we go down the generation.
Oh my
And
gosh. They continue on the dude. The idea of having a generational podcast sounds so sick.
by 2150 we'll have maybe 16 listeners.
And our listeners will only be our family members.
Maybe we can convince.
Mandatory screening of the podcast every day.
That's all you do. You go to work in the fields for 8 hours a day, and then while you wait for your food, you click refresh on the podcast. That's what all 30 of our kids are doing just for for 5 extra hours a
They
day.
they all get 2 laptops, and so they can do both at the same time. Dude, this is genius. We're gonna have so much money.
I can't wait. Well, we're gonna need the money because we're funding for 30 kids. But
No, that's what the farm's for.
you think we can feed 34 people
Big farm.
on a farm? Big farm.
Big farm.
All we eat is corn and wheat. That's your diet. Make
That's all we
do.
need. Well, no, we've played enough Minecraft. We can get some cattle in there.
You know how many cattle we'd have to have? I don't know. I'm not a farmer. We're both from Indiana,
Not,
but we have
not,
no
not,
concept
not
of
that
farming.
not that many. Not that many. Like a quarter of a cow can feed like a family of 5 for a couple months,
Hmm.
or like a half cow. And I've got my butcher's experience, so I can cut up a cow.
We'll have to look more into this. Well, this will be. You know how we were talking about the 10 years down the road podcast.
Yeah.
Was it a 5 or 10 year time capsule we did? 10 year prediction.
Um, I think we did like a year, 5 year, 10 year,
Yeah.
right?
This will be a 30 year. No, this will be a 20 year time capsule. 20 years down the
I need
road.
to go in. I need to go in and watch old episodes and just like edit parts, things, predictions that we make about the future, and make a video.
It'll just be just epic fail montage number 3, and then it'll just be 2 idiots making the worst predictions known to man.
No, what if we're onto something? What if we're actually like clairvoyant? We can see the future. We don't know that we can see the future, but we're making all of the accurate predictions.
We gotta start just saying really unhinged things then, like that we want to happen, like really just crazy thoughts, and just speak them into
Okay.
reality.
No, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a little research thing. So our sample is us, but the individual samples that we're using are the things that we say, and so we have to have at least 30 crazy things that we say, and if it came true, if most of them came true, then we just start going crazy. We just start
Hmm.
saying the most ridiculous things ever.
Then we know we're
So
on to something. Okay,
yeah,
I like that. We'll follow up with you guys when Luke makes this montage, and we'll.
yeah. Once I graduate school, I'm gonna have like 3 months of free time on my hand. I'm just gonna put all the time into the podcast. Learn how to edit.
Pumping out episodes and kids for 3 months.
Pump. No, maybe we'll see. No, pumping out YouTube shorts.
Oh yeah, we got to get on that grind. Instagram
Yeah,
Reels and YouTube Shorts.
yeah. Once I'm a little bit more stable in my career and on that break, and just making it a part of my routine.
I'm excited. Big things in the works.
Big things. We're great with ideas. Our follow through is not the best, but
Yeah. But ideas are what matter.
yeah.
Ideas are what matter, not actual execution. That's what we've come to
Wow,
realize from this entire episode.
we're agreeing with the academics.
It comes full circle.
We're agreeing with the academics that we disagreed with earlier in the podcast.
We're not known for being consistent, but we're known for coming full circle. That's all that
And
matters.
that's what makes us illogically ignorant.
On that note, you got anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to our rambles. There will be shorts and clips in the future. I'm not giving a timeline, but in the future.
Yeah,
At
the
least
timeline's
one.
really kicked us in the ass, like back in the day. You remember we were like weekly episodes and how that worked
Yeah.
out? Because we took a
Yeah.
3-year hiatus.
Remember, even when we were consistent, it would be like, oh yeah, I've got to go to the gym, and you'd come back from the gym, or I would come back from the gym, and then you'd be playing a video game, and we're like, okay, we're not recording anymore. We'll wait till next week.
Yeah, to be determined on the timeline, but they
Yeah.
will be coming one day.
Yeah.
Well,
Sigh.
this has been Illogically Ignorant. Thank you for watching and listening.
Yep. Yep. Catch you guys next time.